That's what we're talking about here is the erosion of the social contract. Because back in the day, the social contract is that you go work for a company and they will give you, they'll basically help you with retirement, they'll help you with health care, and that was in exchange for employment.
For your life.
Yes. And that was the perk, right? Because there were so many competing companies. They said, oh, we'll give you this. And the Google and the .coms and everyone having we give free lunches and we give all these free perks. Well, those kind of turned into, especially the retirement and the healthcare, those turned into things that people needed. So that got them to keep them at those companies. So, but then companies started resenting that. And they said, well, wait a minute, this stuff is expensive. Healthcare is expensive and, retirement's expensive. They didn't want it. They got rid of the pensions and switched to 401ks because that was employee contributed, not company contributed. So the social contract, the erosion of the social contract is also led to where we are now. And so back in the 80s, my dad worked for Transamerica, took the bus from an hour each way to downtown LA. He did it for 25 years. And they said, hey, we're moving your whole division to North Carolina. Meanwhile, my brother and I and my sister were in high school. And all of a sudden he comes in and he says, yeah, we're moving to North Carolina. My mom says, no, we're not. The kids are going to graduate from high school soon. No way. We're not going anywhere. So he was there for a year. And exactly a year, that's what it took for them to be under the laws of that state. Then they were able to lay the whole division off, and he only got a third of his retirement. So 25 years, a third of his retirement. So he comes back home, couldn't believe it, walks in the door. I saw a grown man defeated, and he said, Wesley, stay out of the corporate world. It's polluted. And I was like, okay. And so, and I understand it's been a really interesting career, through that lens, you're in high school and you see your dad say that to you.
Yeah. I mean, you're like 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
And it had to have been a foundational experience for you, something that really impacted the rest of your life. And I mean, if you look at your career, we'll get into this, but you've stayed out of the corporate world for the most part. You've kind of always done your own thing, made your own money.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you work for startups, which is that pseudo corporate, or they play company, they're playing that corporate game. But I've never worked for big corporations. And that was just, I kind of fell into that. That was kind of a happy accident. And well, maybe there aren't too many accidents,
Unless you're painting and you're Bob Ross. It's just a happy little accident.
And oh, look, it's a mountain.
Oh, look, it's a bush.
Yeah.
So frustrating. That man can paint better than anyone.
Practice.
So tell the audience a little bit about all of the different hats you've worn throughout your career. I know it's been a bunch.
Yeah. And I've started out as a web designer back when web design wasn't even a thing. Learned a lot about business because when you're building websites for people, you have to take their analog business and make it digital, and you got to put it online. So eventually that led to understanding more about business. And then you're running teams of web designers and you're running teams of project managers and you're building websites and you're doing those things. But before that, I couldn't get a job as a web designer because there was no one that was hiring web designers. It was too new. So the only way they would hire you is a self-employed person. So I literally started my career as a self-employed person. And then as the company started getting, a lot of companies didn't want to pay you full price. They would just say, hey, we're just going to hire you as a contractor, kind of a contract employee. So I did that for, many years. And then I said, okay, I'm going to get a job at a company. And then all of a sudden, I worked there for a little while and it was January and I got laid off and my wife was 7 months pregnant. And I'm like, oh man, okay. Well, I guess I'm self-employed again, so I did that for 10 years. And I've worked for different companies and different, even though they were contract jobs, they would hire me. They loved to give, a lot of these startups love to give you big titles, oh, you're the VP or the COO or, so I did a lot of that stuff. But then next thing you know, I worked when my daughter was grown, I said, okay, she's already in junior high school. And I said, I think one of my clients asked me to come in and say, hey, can you work for us? And I said, sure, and full time. And I said, great. So I did that as the COO for 8 years. And so that's the last, but it was great. It was an e-commerce company. It was great to learn about that business. And that's really, it was the evolution of learning how businesses work and really refining business operationally. And so it's definitely been the culmination of my career so far. It's been great.
Was there ever any imposter syndrome when you were working in the companies because you had been self-employed for so long?
Absolutely. Because they kind of look at you, it used to be, job hopping used to be, and this was in my latest LinkedIn post too, it's job hopping was looked at as a bad thing.
Right.
And it's like, oh, wow, well, looks like you worked for a lot of companies. And I would, especially come from the tech world, I go, yeah, I think it's been like 13. And so they're looking at like, well, that's so unstable. I go, oh no, this is great, because every time you change, you get to learn something new about a new business. And I looked at it as an asset. But if you're not in that world, if someone's in banking, they look at it as like, wow, you hop around a lot. That's taboo. But that's part of the evolution of the instability of what the workforce has become. So job hopping now, the average time literally today is 2 years for a person to work at a company before they move on. And that's usually because they want to just move on and probably get either promoted or make more money. So the imposter syndrome definitely comes in because when you're hopping from company to company, you don't have a lot of history. And so a lot of times when you're starting at this new company, people kind of go, well, you're definitely focused on your reputation to carry you. So you're hoping, and people are looking at, if they bring you in as a consultant or this new person that's going to save them, you're like, oh man, I hope I pull this off.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's true.
This is Wes, and he's going to save us all.
Oh yeah. No, I think I've been introduced that way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny. It's hard sometimes because you get, it is a lot of pressure, but that's always been one of the things I think we've talked about this. Like you talked about confidence. What was it? There was this basically putting yourself in a position where you have to perform. And I've done that my whole life in different ways. And I didn't know that that's a thing. But I typically, and I think you see a lot of web developers do that too. They'll take on a project that they don't really know exactly how to do. But they'll take it because they want to learn it, or they want to push themselves. So
that's the dream, getting paid to learn.
Yeah.
And becoming the type of person who knows that even if you don't know how to do this specific part of it or the entire project, like you will figure it out along the way.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, and it's easier more than ever today. You have so many resources available today. And I think that, again, that's been another thing that's prompted self-employment. A lot of times people had to, back encyclopedias and, with the internet and YouTube and ChatGPT now, all the AI resources that are available to you, it's incredible how much one person can do.
That is so true. I wish I had ChatGPT when I left finance and started a nonprofit, because that was the first time in my life that I didn't have a boss or a manager or someone to go ask questions to, because I love asking questions. I was so good at taking directions and having set instructions. But then I was in this space where I don't know how to do something and I have no one to ask. Yeah. And then at that moment, you have to become the person who figures it out. And it's really hard at first. It was such a jarring shift from being an employee and then trying to be an entrepreneur.
And it changes back. Well, before the internet was your network, so I had no shame. I'd call up anybody. I remember just calling people up and go, hey, I'm really trying to figure out how to do this thing in Photoshop. I know you guys are an advertising agency. Can I talk to one of your, designers? And they're like, excuse me? I'm all, yeah, come on. I just show up to people's businesses and get to know them and ask questions. And I was relentless.
I love that.
Yeah. I needed it. I needed to learn. I was fiercely, I had to figure it out.
So here's a question that pops into my mind, especially because people my age listen to people like Tim Ferriss. They listen to other business people who came up in an age where being relentless was great. Yeah. Following up all the time, the cold emails, all of that. I feel like it's shifted a little bit. Mm-hmm. Where's the line between being relentless and being creepy or being overbearing?
That's a good question. I I think it's, you have to get to, there's a transaction that has to happen. People want to be like, well, what do I get out of it? I mean, if I'm going to give you this advice, or help you out, what do I get out of it? And so it's always a good way if you can offer something, up first, especially if it's like kind of a cold introduction like that. I think that way because, I remember even before, right, RFPs. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep.
Yeah. So companies would give you an RFP, and I got a job once from a company because they sent me an RFP saying, hey, if you want us to hire you, you have to fill us, pages and pages of documents.
An RFP is a request for proposal for those listening.
Yeah. So I was, and I had been in the industry for a long time. So I wrote on it. I said, you guys are asking the wrong questions. And I just sent it back. I didn't fill it out. And they called me and they said, hey, why'd you do that? And I said, you guys don't know what you're doing. I go, I'm more than happy to fill this out, but you guys aren't going to get the answers that you really need. And so then they hired me. So, I mean, it's just one of these things that I was helping them because I said, look, I can help you. I think that's part of a bigger thing. I was just thinking about that is that you have to be in a giving position and without the expectation of the outcome. If you're one of those people that are trying to get something for, and you're trying to equalize that output. Like if I give you this much of my time, I want that much back. That's a race to the bottom. You can't do, that's not how the universe works. That's not how anything works. Relationships don't work that way. If you're giving with the expectation of receiving, you can't do that. That's a big no.
So you got to give without expectations, give without an attachment to the outcome.
Yeah. And I think at the same time, your customers and your clients have to do that. You have to be invested in your customer and clients. I mean, I've said this multiple times. And I've told clients this too. You can't, it doesn't do me any good to help your business only to see you go down a year from now. Then I didn't do my job, like when I would build websites and then I would see them a year later, they're out of business. I go, well, I guess I can't show that website as part of my portfolio. So I got to help this business. I got to help them figure it out.
Yeah.
So
where do you think that confidence came from to write, you're asking the wrong questions? Because that is a good example. My dad always tells stories where he accepted a job as a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Without knowing how to do books. And he's just like, I'm going to figure it out. Like we talked about in the beginning here, but like, where did that confidence come from?
I think part of that confidence comes from multiple things. I think, one of the ways is that you get tired of stuff not getting done. Over time, maybe a little bit of impatience, I think at the same time, you get a little bit more confident in your abilities of, I can do that. It's, I think that's really important for people to understand and realize that the other side of that is you're going to be okay. I remember one of the biggest breakthroughs, I was trying to learn to surf and I was like, freaked out about it. And my brother-in-law he's like, what's going on? Why are you having a problem? And he goes, well, what if I fall? And he goes, it's only water, right? I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I'm just going to fall into water. So I think I've always looked at things before and then after, like what is the risk? The risk is okay. And I think if we start to understand mitigate the risk in our own minds and realize that you're going to be fine, You're
going to be fine. You're not going to die.
No.
You won't spontaneously combust. That's a lesson that I wish I learned earlier.
Yeah.
Because it changes everything.
It sure does. Yeah. One of my mentors, Steve, he's a very private guy, but I remember for years and years, I would call him, hey, Steve, I'm having a technical problem. Can you help me out? He'd go, and he would only talk to me for an hour. And you could tell after an hour, he'd get impatient if the conversation went longer. And then he would just say, and I go, hey, all right, well, what about this? And he goes, Wes, no one's going to die. It's going to be fine. I'm all, okay, thanks, Steve.
Just go do the thing and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen is nothing. You're
right.
kind of where you are now, not knowing.
Yeah.
The best thing that can happen is you're asking the wrong questions and they hire you.
Yeah. I wish that's that part right there. When we talked a little bit about this fear is, and I even talked about the fear is why you do things and why you don't do things. Man, what a strong, we put so much importance on fear. It's incredible how it owns us. It's amazing. It's disturbing.
I am so all in on fear right now. I think let's talk about it.
Sure.
And I definitely want to bring up these little things I have in this red notebook here. But everything we want in life is on the other side of fear.
Oh, yeah.
And I really liked what you said. That was one of your, so you wrote a blog post 8 years ago, and it was 45 plus 5 things that you've learned throughout your life and the code you live by.
Right.
And one of them was fear is why we do things. It's also why we don't do things.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of those are metaphors, and it just, it was a stream of consciousness. I just, one day I was, and I think I was also, they say that, if you want to learn how to talk better, act like you're talking to your kids or your family members or people that are close to you, or your partner. And so I think I was thinking of my daughter when I wrote all these things. I was like, hey, these are dad's life lessons, And actually, when I sent that to you, I actually sent it to my daughter. She's like, oh my gosh, Dad, I remember when you wrote this. But, I think so much of my life, my dad was a very stern guy. A lot of people thought he was in the military, and he was just a very strict guy, And so I think there was one of those things where I lived scared of my dad. And it prevented me from doing a lot of things in my life because I was afraid of getting in trouble, and there were rules, growing up. And that's why I even say in there, you have to, it took me 20 years to unlearn the things your parents taught you,
Yes.
Because and people sometimes take that the wrong way. They're like, wait, we taught you some good stuff. It's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. It's like parents, but you also have to have forgiveness because your parents only knew what they knew. And you also learn that later in life. You just kind of go, man, I got some hang-ups with my parents. It's like, maybe I should stop blaming them for everything. I mean, like, I'm a grown man, I'm going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And so, but fear is debilitating. It's destructive. It changes. It can really alter your life. And it can create a very narrow, lonely place. And if you don't figure it out, you're going to have a really rough life. And so I've continued to try to figure this out. I said, I gotta get past this. And so I do a lot of things purposely that scare me. I every day. And my wife, I tell her, and I start talking about it. I go, I'm scared, and she's like, wow. And then I realized that now that's a thing. Oh, that's called being vulnerable. But I just did it to put it out there. Like, I'm scared. And then now it's out there. Okay, what are you going to do, Wes? Like, so you're not going to go and you're not going to do this thing? No, man. All right, I'm going to do it.
What are some of the things that you've been scared to do recently?
Oh, man. I just got back from Mammoth. We went mountain biking. And I haven't mountain biked in like 3 months. I've been surfing more. But that also scared me. We can get to that in a second. But we were up in the middle of nowhere. And part of it is I like to prepare myself. And so that's another thing I'm unpacking. But so I was like, what am I scared of? What if I see a bear? Okay, what are you going to do about it? I brought some pepper spray. I'm like, all right. Probably not going to see a bear. But that made me feel good. I brought a knife. Like, okay, all right, what are you going to do with it? Maybe I'm going to stab the bear. Probably not.
Wrestle the bear to the ground with your bare hands.
Yeah. Like Daniel Boone or whatever, all those guys on TV or YouTube. But it made me feel good. So I think there's, I have a Sprinter van that I built out, and a lot of people make fun of me for the van. I go, it's a metaphor. I drive around. It's my daily driver. It's my car. But everything's in there. All my stuff is in there because I'm prepared. And that helps me get through life. And I think preparedness is part of who I am. Just be prepared. I was a Boy Scout, that's like, and so I think to get through that other side of fear, it's do the work, be prepared, and so those are some of the things that, in Mammoth, that was a rough time. We climbed at the top of this mountain. No one was there. Tioga Peak. That was crazy. It was cold and windy, but the sun was out and no one around. we're at 12,000 feet, you know, you just keep going. A lot of times, like they talk about it, just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
You know,
That is really cool that your Sprinter van is a metaphor for your life. You have everything with you. It's like your Batman utility belt.
Oh, it's the safety blanket.
Yeah.
For sure.
You mentioned too that fear. So I think it's clear fear gets in the way of us doing things.
Yeah.
Fear gets in the way of us not doing things.
Yeah.
But you also said fear is why we do things. What do you mean by that?
Because if we don't do them, the result is worse than if we did do them. So regret. Or if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to make enough money and you can't afford to pay your bills. Or you can't put food on the table. Or if you don't do this, you may lose out of a friendship or a relationship, you know. That can even come down to personal choices. You know, relationships, I've been married, 27 years. And, I even said in there in my list, it's like, your number one goal for your partner is to give them a great life. And it's like, well, that's pretty broad, Wes. I mean, that's pretty bold. But if you think about it, if I didn't wake up every day and provide or help out or do my part, whether I wanted to or not, whether I was scared or not, you have to lead. Part of your responsibility in a relationship is to be, and it is that give and take. I don't have to be the leader all the time, but sometimes I have to be the leader. So I think it's really important to take on that role, and you have to. Doesn't mean you can't do those things. It doesn't matter. You can be scared the whole time you're doing it. You can shake if you want. It's fine. But I think it's really important to have those, understand that it's going to be okay, and do it anyway,
That's one of the most powerful things I feel like I learned is that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyways.
Yeah, courage.
And that's what I'm trying to popularize right now is that it's okay to have sweaty pits and sweaty palms.
Oh yeah.
It just means you're doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. It means you're doing something that's exciting, that's new, and that you care. If you didn't care about it, if you're just sitting on the couch eating potato chips, you're probably not sweating unless you're eating a lot of potato chips and watching cops.
Let's normalize fear.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to get into these because you've said a couple of them that are so good. So we talked about fear is why we do things and don't do things.
Right.
You talked about give your significant other a great life. So good. Tell me about this one. Being nice is a lot less maintenance than being mean.
Oh man. I see so this kind of goes back to my dad. My dad he's the guy that where you're in the grocery store and they'd say at the checkout stand and says, and he's probably going to see this and hate this, but they're going to say, hey, did you find everything okay? And he says, well, as a matter of fact, I did. And you move the deodorant from aisle 5 to aisle 7 and you would lay into the cashier. And it's like, man, like now that person doesn't want to help you at all, probably going to be a little bit slower checking you out, and I think that not every moment has to be a teachable moment. Not every moment. We don't always have to be right. And we don't always have to make that person understand. We don't know what's going on with that person. We don't know if they're having a bad day, and I think that it's really important to just, it's nice. Just being nice. It's like, oh, just be a nice person or be kind. But it's bigger. That is just the tip, right? And there's so much that goes around with that. People want to be around people that inspire and motivate them. They don't want to be, they're not going to listen to you if you start yelling at them or giving them a bad time. They just turn off. And so if you wanted to be an effective leader, person, partner, friend, listen and really understand and be empathetic of what they're going through. And so, you have to take yourself out of the equation to do that. And it takes practice to be nice. It really does. You have to sometimes keep your mouth shut because you just don't know the story. And I've really tried to focus on that throughout my life because I don't know what people are going through. And it's sometimes it's not even about putting yourself in their shoes because you just still don't know. It's more of just like, hey, I know it sounds like you're going through a rough time, Hey, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. That's it. You're not you don't have to solve it right there. So, but I think being nice gets you so much farther in life. People want to be around nice people. Pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward. And from my perspective, it seems like it's easier to be nice than it is to be mean. I mean, it takes
Yeah.
less energy a lot of the time.
Oh man.
How was your day? Did you find everything? Oh, yeah, found everything great. Instead of like having to say all the things that went wrong and articulate it. And
Well, it eats you up from the inside out, right?
Yeah.
And because we so many times, you know, I've even said this before to you, like if you want to figure yourself out, or you want someone to figure themselves out, ask them to tell you all the stuff they don't like, you know, because we're conditioned, you know, like, can you give us a review? Oh yeah, I can give you a review. You know, we're getting hit on reviews for Amazon and these businesses, but there's so many more people, you know, for every good review, you're going to have 100 bad reviews, you know, of something that went wrong. And it's too bad that we're conditioned that way. And so, but to carry that around with you all the time is just again, it's a lonely place. And you got to get free from that. And again, that takes practice because there's so many things outside forces that want us to say the bad stuff, you know?
yeah.
Because negativity sells.
Oh, I just read something that is so good. It's by George Mack. He's a writer, writes a lot on Twitter. And he said, he wrote this little short thing, and it was, if the news was a person.
Right.
And I don't have my phone with me. I could pull it up, but it's basically like news. Hey, you want to see a video of 1,000 people dying in a country you've never heard of?
Oh yeah.
No. Why would I ever want to see that? News.
Right.
Do you want to see a video of a plane crashing? Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy that people still watch the news. And I think I talk a lot about this with my parents. I think they grew up in a generation where you could believe what was on TV.
Oh yeah.
You could believe what was on TV. You could believe if it was in the newspaper. Like, there was actual truth back then. And now we're in
Right.
this era of the death of truth. And I've been noticing it. I don't watch any news, but when I'm at the gym in the morning, they'll put the news on, and it'll be like the local San Diego news. It's like some little kid's birthday party, and they're bringing him to the Padres game. And then across the bottom in big letters, it's just like 100 baby kittens were murdered
Yeah.
in a neighborhood near you.
Right.
And it's just like, what? Like, how can people watch this and not
Right.
realize that it's going to affect the rest of your day? It's going to affect
Yeah.
your interactions with other people. You are going to end up being mean to someone at the grocery store if you watch the news all the time.
You know what's funny is, I don't know. I think it just depends on the type of person, you know, because some people love, like, I don't watch horror shows.
Oh,
or
me neither. I'm a huge
movies or-
scaredy cat.
I just, because I do internalize it, and I haven't really figured that part out, but it sits with me for a while. And, you know, people, they'll say, oh, come on, you know, don't you want to watch this show? And I'm like, no, man, I'll be thinking about it for a couple days. I don't want to give free rent to those thoughts in my brain.
Because then the next time you're doing something cool with your life,
Yeah.
you're camping, you're backpacking, you're out in the
Right.
middle of nowhere, you just start thinking of Jason from Friday the 13th. And I have a hot take.
Oh yeah.
I have a hot take. My hot take is that people who like horror shows aren't living interesting enough lives,
That might be true.
because they need to get the craziness, the action from somewhere else.
I think the people that gossip are similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. They love stirring the drama. They got to have it.
There's
You know?
that. And then there's this whole meme. You've probably heard of
Yeah.
it. It's that women love murder movies and murder podcasts. And it's like, there's been a bunch of comedians who
Yeah.
do this joke about it. There's a song about it, but like, it's like you fall asleep listening to Serial, which is like
Right.
about someone going missing. And it's just so interesting. For me, I'm like, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Have you seen Parasite?
You know what? My wife like watching horror movies and stuff like that. I didn't watch Parasite, but I'm the worst movie watcher on the planet, because she'll be watching that stuff. I'll walk in and I go, hey, what's going on? She'll go, oh, this is the crazy part. I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. Go into my office. Yeah.
I'm also pretty bad at watching movies because
Yeah.
I'll just go to bed.
Yeah.
My mother, if you're watching this, is the worst movie watcher of all time, because
Oh,
she
man.
won't stop talking
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
She'll be asking questions, and it's not even like they're good questions. She'll ask a question like, say it was a horror movie, and it's like someone is going down into the basement and you know they're going to die.
Oh, yeah.
My mom will go,
For sure.
where's she going? Why is she doing that?
Yeah.
I literally had to make a rule with my mom. It's like, you need to pay me $0.25 every time you talk
Yeah.
during a movie, and I will retire early.
I love it. That's
Okay.
Good stuff.
So we got a little off course there.
No, it's good.
But there is no course. There's no path. The
Mhm.
pathless path.
That's right.
The next one that I really loved, well, this kind of relates to friendship you mentioned, but you say that friendship takes maintenance.
Oh man, it's so much so. When I recently started consulting again, which was last year, I made a list of 100 people and I emailed them and I said, I want to get together with you. I want to talk to you. I have no agenda. I feel like I've just disconnected from you. I said, I will take you out to lunch. I'll take you out to coffee. I'll take you out to dinner. Let's have a beer, whatever you want to do. And I did it for 3 months. I was in LA, Orange County, San Diego, and I met with some of these people that I haven't seen in years. And it was like we talked yesterday. And I think that's an example of some good, true friendships, and you have to maintain those people. Like the only time I've ever been a best man, and my good buddy, Brian, and it was great to see him and it was great to catch up. But life sometimes happens, you either, whether jobs or people or kids or relationships, and you just drift apart. And when that happens though, is that when you get older, it's harder to find people that you have, common interest in, with. And so I've found that you really have to, if you don't want to be lonely, if you want to have people to share your life with, we're social creatures, we want to do that. And instead of spitting stuff out, hey guys, Facebook, here's what I just did today, or hey, look at the cool vacation I'm at on Instagram, having those connections in real life it was more incredible than I imagined. I loved it. Cost me some money.
Yeah.
But I pay it. I would have paid double, triple easily to have those connections again. And it was really neat to see people and just progress. And so I think that you do have to have that maintenance. And sometimes all it takes is just a little, hey man, how you doing? How's it going? How's life? And it's really important. It's important for them. You don't know what that person's going through. And maybe timing is everything. Maybe you just sent something to that person and you changed their day. I hope you're doing good. Thinking about you. I do that all the time with my daughter. I love you, miss you, thinking about you today. You don't have to respond. Just want to say hi. I think those little things, those little micro, if you want to call them, connections, go so far.
Micro connection. I like that. I've definitely started doing that and trying to do it more and more. When you think of someone, just text them.
Totally.
Agendaless.
Yeah.
I have a little note over by my computer that says connect with people often and for no reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the magic happens when you come in. It's two people coming together with no agenda.
Right.
No one's trying to get anything out of the interaction besides connection.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, just giving of your time. Mm-hmm. In this case, giving of some money for the meals without an expectation, without a hoped for outcome. But I'm sure things did come from that because that's how the world works.
Yeah.
You come together and things are created. What were some of the things that came from that besides just rekindling old friendships?
You know what? Probably one of the coolest things was an old colleague of mine from San Diego. She's fantastic. And she's, we sat for a couple hours and I was leaving and my daughter's had just finished her first year in college and she was looking for an internship, but she had kind of briefly mentioned it. She was just like, yeah, maybe I should get an internship. Her counselor told her she should do it. So all of a sudden I'm walking away and my friend, I'm just about to get in the car. She goes, hey, Wes, does your daughter want an internship, by the way? And I go, yeah, I didn't even know what it was. And then she says, okay, I got a friend at his company. She needs someone to help her out. And I go, great. Didn't know what it was. Didn't know anything. I just came home and said, hey, my daughter's name is Piper. I said, Piper, I got you an internship. I'm going to be connecting. Turns out it's for a space company. They're building the next space station. And so she's like, oh my gosh, Dad, this is like a real job. And I go, yeah, man. Well, so she's blown away every day. She walks in, she's all, so guess what? I just learned, how they're building these thermal coverings to protect from the radiation on the space. She's talking to me and stuff. I'm like, this is incredible. So much so that now she's going to change her major to engineering.
No way.
Oh yeah. So now just that little interaction, I literally changed the course of my daughter's life, and for the better. She's so engaged and she's so excited. She's only 19 and she loves it. She's always been really good at math, but she didn't know what she wanted to do. And So that to me is the best, just being there, connecting with people. And I've always said opportunities find you, and if you are out there searching for them, if you sit here on the couch eating potato chips, like you said, nothing's going to happen. You have to get out there, and it's not even networking. It's just connecting. Hey man, how you doing? Being there at the right time for those opportunities to find you. That's how that works.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That opportunities find you, and you need to put yourself out there
right
to be found. I can't remember who says it, but increasing the surface area of luck.
Totally.
And Jesse Itzler, who's a CEO of ultramarathoner, he always says opportunity. He says something along the lines of opportunity will find you, but not on Sunday night when you're on the couch watching the Kardashians.
Totally. Yeah.
And people like him are crazy. I mean, I went and saw him speak, which was a really interesting experience for me that I'll mention in a second. But he told a story. His first company was a private jet charter.
Right.
And he goes to a TED Talk. He somehow got a ticket to a TED Talk, and he actually got into the TED arena, but he couldn't get into the actual like people speaking. So he went and posted up in a Starbucks. And the first day he's just sitting there and like watching all these people he looks up to come in, and they're getting a latte and a muffin. And he's just kind of watching. He was too nervous to say anything the first day. Day 2, he goes back at like 6 a.m. whenever Starbucks opens, and he buys 100 muffins. He buys all of their muffins. So everyone starts coming in at the break, and they're asking for a latte and a muffin. And the lady's like, we don't have any muffins. And Jesse's sitting at a table, and he goes, I'll sell you a muffin. And I'm sure that he embellishes. The story's probably changed as he's told it. The fish has gotten bigger. But apparently the first person he sat down with became an investor in his company.
Really?
And that goes back to the like confidence piece of how do you do that, especially when you're early or young in your career.
Yeah.
Have the confidence to do that. I mean, I think I could do that now because I've put myself in so many uncomfortable situations, and I've seen that I'm not going to die, but that's ballsy.
Get those high school bullies out of your head. I mean, we put so much emphasis on high school. I've seen this before with friends, and it's only 4 years of life, but man, people carry that baggage with them like forever. It's so crazy. Like I've just seen so many people that sometimes they peak in high school. Like that was it for them. Whether they were the ASB president, maybe they were the football star, the homecoming queen, and they think that was it. But there's so much more. Like you can rewrite your story anytime you want. That's what's pretty cool about today. I mean, you don't have to do the same thing. And in college, I had this professor that said you'll have 6 jobs in your lifetime, and 4 of those jobs haven't even been invented yet. And that's just the evolution of the workplace and how we do things. So it's pretty interesting to see how this evolves and our thoughts evolve, and it's inspiring.
That is really important to remember.
Yeah. And
my first job I thought was going to be my last job.
Right.
My second job I thought was going to be my last job. Then I had to go make my own job, quit those. And you have one in here about quitting jobs. It is quit your job for the better one and then do it again.
Yeah. That was because I think that, and I've seen this firsthand even recently, sometimes people put so much I wanted to create a sign. I like to run, and I run. I have this little 3.5 mile track by my house, and I see all these people, as I'm running up the street, they're in the traffic light, and they're all got there, and they've got their coffee, and people are smoking and doing that whole thing, and you can tell they're going to their desk job. And I wanted to create a sign and pin it to the back of my shirt that says, "You are not your job." So that everyone sees that when they're running, and they see me running, and they're in their, because I think people, their identity becomes who they think they are, or who they are. And they go, because that's what we've got accustomed to do. Well, what do you do? Right. And that's you want to have a good answer, you don't want to just say, oh, I'm a stay-at-home dad. That doesn't really have that panache, but
unless you own it. Yeah.
If you're like, hey man, you know what? I'm a stay-at-home dad, but my house is amazing. I garden, like you should see my backyard. That I'd probably do something like that. I'd probably really embellish it, and I do that. I get a chance to do that. I love doing it. I have to have projects, but I think that people put too much too much emphasis on, that. And I think that's important. You're not your job.
Yeah, especially in America. I remember
Yeah.
someone from the UK or Europe somewhere was talking about that, how like in Europe, when you meet someone for the first time, you don't say, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, tell me about your job. It's like, tell me about yourself. Who are you? You ask someone, who are you in America? They're like, what?
Yeah.
Are you on mushrooms right now?
One of the coolest quotes that I've seen this guy say, he says, I want to change it. I want to change the narrative to be not what do you do, but what are you building? And I thought that would be cool to walk up something. I'm kind of weird like that. Sometimes I'll walk up and I'll say funky stuff to people and I go, so, I'll just say a weird question. I was about to say a story, but it's okay. It's an old story. But I think if I said, what do you build or what are you building? I think that was something like, oh, well, I'm working on, that can go deep and go shallow. Someone could say, oh, I'm really trying to build a better community, trying to meet people, or I'm really trying to build a safe space for people to get out of the house, or, there's so many things that people can think about. I'm really trying to build a better neighborhood, get to know my neighbors more. There's so many things that you can think about. I'm building a patio cover in my backyard, whatever, I think that's a really strong, I like that, kind of way to talk or think about things.
That's a great one. A question that I use that's pretty undefeated right now is, what are you excited about?
Yeah.
What are you currently excited about? What's going on in your life that you're fired up about? And that usually gives someone a lot of options. This is a really cool thing I learned recently. What is it called? I don't know if it has a specific name, but when you meet someone, especially small talk, you don't want to ask a direct question. You don't want to ask a closed end question, like where someone can respond with yes or no.
Right.
Because then you have to ask another question and it's awkward. You want to ask open-ended questions. And when you answer, you want to give people things to latch onto. So if you asked me, who are you or what do you do? I could say, okay, this is what I do now. This is what I did in the past. I went to school here.
Right.
I live here. You try and give them just like multiple things to grab onto so that you can come together and start just connecting these little nodes of actual connection.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, that's when you have the best conversations with someone. You have a mutual friend. You grew up in the same place. It's why you meet someone for the first time and you realize you have a mutual friend and you have to take a picture and text it to them and be like, I'm with so-and-so.
Yeah. I think the art of conversation is fascinating. My degree is communication, and that was just happened to be where web design was housed, and it was under the telecommunications and film department. So I got even some exposure in film too with my degree, but even just literally analyzing words and phrases and statements that come out of your mouth. So some of my classes, we would analyze how someone receives it, how someone says it, and all of a sudden unpack that exchange. And I never really thought about that as even a formal discipline or a way to even view how we communicate. But as I've gotten older, it's become one of my superpowers. I didn't know that. It's kind of one of those things. You don't know you're being trained for something your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now this is, wow, you're really, and you don't even know you do it until people say, wow, you're really good at that. You're really a good communicator. You're very clear and direct. And actually, I think I told you the story, but just recently I went to see my doctor, and she's awesome, and I said, wow, doc, I think you're the best doctor that I have. I really like our exchange. You're direct. You immediately tell me what's going on, and you get right to the point, and we just get going. She started laughing. I go, what? I paid you a compliment. And she said, yes, I'm direct because you're direct. And I'm all mind blown, And of course she is, because she's a doctor. She says, yeah, I'm adapting to my patient. And I go, oh my God. I'm down here now and she's up there. She's like, I just learned something about communication and, mirroring that person, in that way. And it was pretty cool. I mean, you're always being learning, so.
Sounds like she was playing chess and you're playing checkers.
Totally was. I definitely caught me off guard, but I loved it. I love when I learn something new.
It's the best.
Oh, it's the coolest.
I mean, I think that's why when
Yeah.
we got coffee for the first time,
Yeah.
we were just like vibing. And
Oh, yeah.
I really wanted to bring you on because we're both people who love learning.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we also love to share our learning with other
Yeah.
people. Like my whole job could be learning cool things and then telling other people about it. I mean, that's why I write a weekly newsletter. I just get so fired up when you read something. Like I just read that Michelangelo, sculptor, made the David. David is 17 feet tall. It was carved from a block of marble that was, I don't know, probably 20 feet.
Wow.
2 sculptors that you've never heard of passed over that same piece of marble because it wasn't good enough.
Wow. That's incredible.
I just heard that and it gave me the chills. It's like that piece of marble wasn't good enough for them.
Yeah.
And it turned into like one of the best sculptures of all time.
Well, that's a metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think life's like that. And man, we probably have moments in our lives where we could look back and go, yeah, I skipped over that piece of marble. I probably could have helped, you know, build something spectacular. But sometimes, again, that goes back to fear, right? You know, because we have self-doubt. You know, we get in our own head, you know. But I think that's kind of what ended up, I mean, it's the career that I have now. That's what I do is I help people. I'm kind of like helping people get rid of their fear so that I can clear I've often said this, I clear the road so you can build, or clear the area so you can build your house on it. You know, because sometimes people get in their own way and they're like, oh, and then they have this roadblock, you know. But
we've spent the whole time talking about other things besides what you do because we got so excited. What is it that you do? Let's talk a little bit about that. And then I want to ask how people can find you, learn more about you, all the things.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I've basically whittled it down to one sentence, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Of course.
In marketing. And so I just, the way I've come up with my latest is I help people operate better to increase profit. And it seems like a simple statement. And a lot of people don't think that operations is that big of a deal. But when you're not organized, everybody knows it. We all know the friend that's not organized, the friend that's late all the time, the friend that's, you know, disheveled, the friends that just always struggling with keeping their life together. And you lose credibility. They don't really have that authority, you know. And so when you have a problem not being organized, it affects everything. And it can really, you know, stagnate your life. And so I've learned, I didn't know that that's who I was. You know, it was only when I got into, especially over the last 8 years, that I realized I'm an operator. And the new word is also integrator, you know, and I love getting stuff done. Someone asked me that the other day, how do you know that? Like, how do you see stuff? And I go, I just see stuff. And I don't like this metaphor, but it's a great example. It's like you see the Matrix and you see all that stuff, and I just see it. And I go, oh, it's like that Tetris. It's like, okay, we got to change this and move this here, and we got to do these things. And here's the foundation pieces we got to get right before we go on to the next thing. And it's like, it happens in real time for me, you know? And so I go, oh, so then after years and years of doing that, I just said, oh, I think that's what I got to do, you know? And so last year I said, I think this is what I'm supposed to do now. I think I'm supposed to help people make their businesses better. I think, and it was weird. It's not cheeky. It's like, it's not this is my path. Like, you know, it wasn't like that. I just started feeling it. And I told my wife, I go, and she's like, oh, so you're going to, like, what's the next thing you're going to do? You know? And I go, I think I got to help people with their businesses. She's like, what? Well, yeah, I think that's who I am. I think I'm supposed to be that person that helps them so that they can have the experiences in the life that I've had. And so that's what I do. I help people operate their businesses better. I help them grow it, get it organized, and make more money. And I get rid of all the interference. And then I hold their hand and tell them everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
You know?
That's an important piece too.
Yeah. They want that, you know, and maybe because it's the little gray in the beard or whatever that helps, you know, that's fine. You know, I'll make it all gray if you want me to make it help you better.
It's just sun bleached.
That's right.
That's what my dad says.
That's right. That's right.
So Wes, we could talk for hours and hours. My camera is at 5%.
Oh.
So we will have to wrap it up.
That's okay.
Where can people go to learn more about you, to work with you, to learn from you?
Sure. It's just go to weschyrchel.com. So WESCHYRCHEL.com, and contact with me there, and you can read all about what I do.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes. Do we want LinkedIn, Instagram? Yeah. Are you anywhere else?
Definitely on LinkedIn and Instagram. So LinkedIn, again, Wes Chyrchel, or on Instagram, Wes Chyrchel Consulting. Find me there.
And Instagram is just shirtless photos of you mountain biking.
You know what? That was the next phase, because you're always trying to push the envelope.
Yes. Last question. Any of the 45 plus 5 bits of wisdom that you live your life by, which did I not cover? What's one that I didn't cover that you want to end on?
Number 10 is get rid of people, things, and clothing in your life that don't fit anymore. Yeah. So that's it.
That's it. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us today. As always, we love you guys.